Hey, what's up, everybody? This is going to be a video about the island of Atlantis. Now, I'm going to kind of get to it pretty quickly. I really want to spend too much time going around in circles with it, but basically, a lot of us know the story, or these bits of the story. There was an island many, many years ago that allegedly sunk, and archaeologists and researchers have scrambled around the world to find this legendary, mysterious place that nobody really knows where it is, or they speculate, but it's obviously a huge mystery. There's way too many questions still asked to this day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain what Atlantis is, and I'm going to explain where Atlantis is. Okay, so when it comes to Atlantis, we have to start with the Greek philosopher Plato. In Plato's Critias, he says that he heard the story of Atlantis from his grandfather, who in turn heard it from the popular Athenian statesman and lawgiver Solon. That's Solon. And this all takes place 300 years prior to Plato's time. Mind you now, not Plato, excuse me. Solon himself was alleged to have heard this story while he was in Egypt, visiting a temple called the Temple of Neith. Think it's Neith, in the city of Sais. That's Sais. And while at this temple, Solon met a priest of the goddess Neith by the name of Sonchis. Sonchis. The story goes that this Sonchis goes on to tell Solon the story of a great civilization destroyed by a major catastrophic situation, and in turn, being engulfed and surrounded by waters, sink into the ocean floor. So now we've established a point of origin for this whole story. Uh, the story comes to us via Plato. Plato gets a story from the grandfather. The grandfather gets a story from Solon. Solon gets the story from a priest named Sanchez in the city of Sais in Egypt, in the temple of Neith, who's supposed to be a goddess that was there, whatever like that. So that's where we're at. We're getting a fourth person version of the story or whatever like that. And as this story starts to unfold, we're left with some interesting things, Like, okay, so Solomon goes to this place. He's told by this priest about this highly advanced civilization, right? Mind you, while he's there also, the priest lets him know that this story takes place 9,000 years prior to their time, which is Solomon's time, which would be over 11,000 years from today. Check this out. Now, Egypt's oldest writings, not according to me, according to the archaeologists, Egypt's oldest writings dated are dated to about 5,600 years ago. It's just hard to believe that the sinking of an island story could survive about 6,000 years prior to the writings with such detail. Like, nah, man. Like 6,000 years with like such. If you read Plato's Critias, like there's a lot of detail in there. That's a long time. To 6,000 years they went without writing anything down, and then all of a sudden, after 6,000 years after this thing takes place, they write it down with such detail. That's a stretch. That's not even a stretch. That's crazy. But anyway, and look, to top it all off, the actual temple that Solomon visited, it doesn't even exist, because according to these people, the Persians, another group they love to use in their historical narratives, went into Egypt at a certain point and destroyed a lot of temples in this city of Sais, including the Temple of Neith. Now, this is funny because I always talk about this in like my straw man civilizations work. But these Persians, just a biblical people. If you, I tell anyone, get you a 1972 and or but namely get the 72, but get both of them. The 1972 and 1973 Encyclopedia Judaica. In there, you can look up Persian, and they'll tell you that there's no such thing as Persians. These Persians are biblical people, and in fact, where you see Persia today in Iran, the name of that place is actually Fars. That's the name of the place. That was its name. All the way up until the British Empire sent agents in via the Church of England, and they changed the name from Fars to Persia. And you know why they did that? To give life to a biblical Persia. That's what that was about. You know, they see all these things are connected. The Bible and the Greek writings and all this type of stuff. You know what I mean? There's a connection with all this stuff. So they actually changed that name much later to Persia. The same way they changed over there in Northeast Africa. They changed that land to Ethiopia in like the 1840s, 50s, 60s, around that time. To give people the idea that Ethiopia over there is the biblical Ethiopia, but it's not. You understand? Okay, so let's get into what Atlantis actually represents. And let me give a disclaimer before I really start. This story specifically is very similar to those writings you see in the Bible, meaning just occult writing, esoteric, hidden information. None of it's literal, and when you try to interpret it literally, then you get lost and sucked into a rabbit hole, especially now with the help of people like the Church of England and all the little ministry groups that go around trying to literalize the Bible and these ancient stories while profiting off of it and also keeping you stuck in these little woke rabbit holes they done created. But anyway, this story of Atlantis. The island of Atlantis truly represents the brain. In fact, the brain itself is an island as well, because the word island actually comes from the Germanic word meaning thing on the water. Note the brain is surrounded by CSF, it's cerebral spinal fluid, which causes the brain itself to float inside the skull like a buoy on water. Next, let's deal with the infamous Pillars of Hercules that many love to reference in connection with the location of this Atlantis. And like I said before, this Atlantis represents the brain. So this ultimately means that the Pillars of Hercules will be found within the body. I mean, they have to be. So let us shift our focus to the part of the body directly connected to the brain structure, and that would be the spinal column. In specific, the cervical region of the human spine possesses what is called the articular pillars. This region is located at the top of the spine under the brain stem. It is between those pillars that we travel to get to the famous island of Atlantis. Let me further expand on that. Note the word Atlantis means island of Atlas. This is so damn fitting because the pillars of the cervical spinal region, the CSR, they house the last group of vertebrae before you get to the brainstem, including that infamous 33rd vertebrae that so many people talk about when they talk about, oh, masonry is 33 degrees and the 33 vertebrae. Yeah, well, this is that. The infamous 33rd vertebrae is called Atlas. Note, Atlas, that 33rd vertebrae is named in honor of the Greek god, the Greek titan Atlas. And what does Atlas does? What does he do? Atlas is the Greek titan that was ordered by Zeus as a punishment to hold up the heavens on his back for eternity, which is exactly what the 33rd vertebrae Atlas does. It holds up the physical heavens, which are the head and the brain. Note the 12 constellations that you see in your physical sky in heaven, they are the 12 cranial nerves that are in the earthly heaven, your brain, your head. You see? So it's all a correlation to that. Just as the Greek titan Atlas is holding up the earth in the 12 constellations, Atlas, the 33rd vertebrae there, is holding up the heavens. You know what I mean? This is how this goes. Like, it's as above, so below. So as we travel through these articular pillars, which are the pillars of Hercules, we come to the 33rd and the topmost vertebrae, Atlas. And beyond him is the island Atlantis, aka the brain. See, I've said this many times before. It was the consciousness of man that sunk. We sunken into a lower self, a lower people. You know what I mean? Just a more mundane people operating from such a lower aspect. All the information and all that is kept hidden away from everybody, and now everybody's out here caught up in religion, caught up in politics, caught up in all these different mundane aspects of reality, and getting sucked into all of this. Not that many people are really transcending as it was meant to be. And these stories highlight how important the brain is, because the brain is indeed the vehicle in which man/woman travels from mundane, lower natured human to godhood. This is why the brain was held in such high significance. And that's what this story of Atlantis is about. But yeah, that's what sunk, man. Consciousness. Not some island over 11,000 years ago that everybody is still running around looking for. That the quote-unquote original proof of this thing, at least from a documentary standpoint, doesn't even exist, because the temple doesn't exist, which was destroyed by some people who didn't even exist. You see what I'm saying? Like, yeah, it's time for us to start looking deeper into things and understanding what's going on. But a lot of it comes from us, a lack of us understanding, like, symbology. Like Manly P. Hall said, the Freemason guy, he said, until you begin to understand signs and symbols, you won't really be able to understand, like, what's going on out here. And that's the truth. But, yeah, I'm going to cap it off like that, So this is Atlantis. Atlantis is the brain. That's what it represents. That's what it's always represented. And you're never going to find it underwater, over here, over there. It's not in America. It's not in Africa. It's not in Mexico. It's not in China. It's not anywhere. It's inside of you. So, like most of these other things that you're looking for outside of you, they are in you. That's why you're never going to find them looking outside. All right, man. Peace.